Let's bring in our panel. Clinton supporter and former South Carolina state legislator Bakari Sellers, Democrat and former Congressional Black Caucus executive director Angela Rye, also Trump supporter Kayleigh McEnany, conservative Trump critic Tara Setmayer, and Trump supporter and former South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, and our own John King, chief national correspondent and Inside Politics anchor. It is interesting, John, that Donald Trump has continued to publicly talk about African Americans, but he's doing it in an overwhelmingly white community to an overwhelmingly white crowd. And he doesn't seem to be making much of an effort to actually go to any place where there are African Americans to speak directly to people.
Well, he has 80 days to go, and let's see if he does it. Let's see if he goes into inner city Detroit. Let's see if he goes into inner city Cleveland. Let's see if he goes into inner city Philadelphia. But it is interesting, and I know you have some skeptics. I'm waiting to hear what Bakari has to say about this, to say, why is he doing this? And some will say it's cynical. Some will say it's a ploy. I think we should watch and see if there's follow-up. If he says it once or twice in a speech, that's not enough for any community. And it's certainly not enough for a community that feels like, in many cases, not all, but in many cases feels most of the Republican Party has ignored them. Look, Donald Trump is getting 1 or 2% in national polls right now among African Americans. Mitt Romney got 6%. That was pretty pathetic. Even Mitt Romney would tell you that. John McCain got 4%. George W. Bush got 11% back in 2000, the last Republican to win the White House. What is Donald Trump up to here, Anderson? Of course, any candidate, I hope, would like to get more votes in every community. So if he can get a little bit more in the African American community, and if turnout among African Americans drops just a little bit in the first post-Obama election, that helps Donald Trump. But there's something else at play here, too. A lot of independents view Donald Trump as intolerant. If they see that he's reaching out, see that if he's making a genuine effort, not just 1 or 2 speeches, maybe it helps him among more independent voters, too, moderate voters who think he's intolerant.
Bakari, I want to play just, again, what Donald Trump said, with a little bit more of what he said, and have you respond.
I say it again, what do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
Is that a message, actually, you think, for African Americans? Or
I don't think that we've seen a candidate that is more uncomfortable around people of color in recent history than Donald Trump. I think that, and I would hope that Kayleigh and Andre, when we get to them, would agree that maybe Donald Trump had something to say, but that was definitely not the way to say it. I think that Donald Trump, and I actually spoke to some of my friends today who are not overly excited about Hillary Clinton, but they heard the same condescending rhetoric that I heard. And I think that Donald Trump, I gave the litany yesterday about Donald Trump's background and relationships with African Americans, so I dare not repeat that today. But Donald Trump has a lot of work to do showing that he has policy prescriptions for a lot of the ills that he talks about. He didn't lay those out. But he actually has to learn how to speak to African Americans with dignity and respect. First, there is an entire middle class of African Americans. We're not all destitute. We're not all impoverished. We're not all just sitting on our behinds at home. African Americans want to achieve the American dream. They get up and work hard every single day. And yes, some of those people who work hard every day don't work for Donald Trump, because that's one of the first retorts I get. Oh my God, you should see the people who work for him. So he has a long way to do. But I think what you saw today in that speech is why diversity matters. Because if Donald Trump had someone in his inner circle reading that speech that was a person of color, they would have said, look, I know what you're trying to say, but that is really not the best way to say it.
Did it surprise you to hear that?
No. I mean, this is more of the same from a candidate that has demonstrated over time. I remember saying from the outset that I thought that his language was racist and bigoted, and I remember getting heavily criticized. And I think over time we've seen that message to remain true. I think the biggest frustration I have with Donald Trump, and it's not just unique to his campaign, it also, I think, extends to the GOP writ large, is when you hit them back with, what are you talking about, you know, Democrats are the ones who are the mayors and the local elected officials in local inner cities. That is not the only problem. We have state legislatures that are Republican controlled, and these issues are not unique to either party. Racism knows no bounds. And so to me, the frustration is, if we want to have an honest conversation about progressive policies in this country to uplift communities of color, we have to deal with the institutional racism that is not unique to either party.
Hillary Clinton just tweeted a response to Trump's message. I want to put that up. Says, this is so ignorant, it's staggering. I mean, do you think there is a chance, Kaylee, that African Americans might find Donald Trump's message insulting?
Not at all. You know, don't take it from me. Take it from black liberal commentator Tavis Smiley, who said that under the Obama administration, blacks are failing in every single economic category. Don't take it from me. Take it from black conservative commentator Larry Elder, who came out with a staggering number that under 3 years of the Obama administration, we saw that the average wealth for an African American is now at $11,000. For a white American, it is $142,000. That is a 13-fold difference. When Kennedy won the election for the first time, won the black community in overwhelming numbers, Dr. Martin Luther King said something very powerful. He said that it was time for Kennedy to pay the promissory note, make good on the promissory note that he put forth, and he did. Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act. Well, Democrats have been given an astonishing mandate going back to Bill Clinton when he won African Americans by 80%. They have failed this community. They are struggling, a 13-fold wage gap, a huge unemployment gap, and these kids are in failing schools. It's unfair.
I mean, does it sound to you, though, that he's painting with a very broad brush here, saying your schools are failing, you're living in poverty, things can't get any worse for you?
No, because that's a lot of people's reality. Look, no one on this panel lives in the inner city, so I don't think any of us can speak to
you
the
don't know
struggle.
any of our stories.
I mean,
you don't know any of our stories, and I'm not going to speak for Bakari, but I am going to just say this. You don't know the districts that he's represented. You don't know the members who I worked for and the areas that they represented. No, I am not from the inner city. No, my parents were never on food stamps. No, I don't know what it's like to be on welfare or have to have cared about welfare reform. But I know people in my family who have had these struggles, and I am so disrespected by what he said today, and I'm further disrespected by you putting at the feet of President Obama the wealth gap. I just talked about institutional racism for a reason. We have to stop living in denial and acting like the first black president got into office to discriminate against black people.
Not the first
that
black
is not
president.
what happened. It is
We've had
the
a
first
series
black
of
president.
Democratic presidents
No,
who have
Kaylee, and we had
failed
George
this community.
H.W. Bush, and we had Ronald Reagan before that, and after that we had W. This is about everybody in between.
So
this is about racism not knowing any
why
bounds.
is
You
Tavis-
guys are not going to be
Why is
effective
Tavis Smiley?
until you
Why is Tavis Smiley wrong?
I think-
Why is he wrong? Tell me why he's wrong.
Because Tavis Smiley and Cornel West have been legitimately wrong when it comes to Barack Obama for a very long period of time. Those are personality differences and character issues that we dare not delve into or bore the viewers with tonight. So I do discount what Tavis Smiley says, and I do discount what Dr. Cornel West says.
The
problem is
but let me-
the African American
but-
community trusted the Clintons.
But
and do you know what the
and do you
Clintons
know,
did?
do you know African American wealth during the
African
American wealth during the 1990s actually went up? You know, African American wealth and that income inequality gap that you're talking about actually
you know what also
shrunk.
happened?
But also,
you know what also happened? I know you don't want to talk about the
Kaylee,
crime bill. That more
Kaylee,
African
before the
Americans.
crime bill, there was a crack cocaine
not everybody wants.
Kaylee,
Not
let me
everybody
just tell you
wants.
this.
Bakari and then
Let me
Kaylee.
tell you this. I'm from Denmark, South Carolina, right? We got 3 stoplights and a blinking light. We're on the footprint of what's called the quarter of shame, where kids go to school where their heating and air don't work, where their infrastructure's falling apart, where teachers push around carts and are underpaid. This is broken. This is not an inner city, I know, but these are African American children that are being punished because of their zip code. On top of that quarter of shame is also a stroke belt. It's where African Americans are predisposed to preventable illnesses like diabetes, like cardiovascular disease. But this just isn't where I live. This is also in Compton. This is also in Flint, Michigan. This is, and Donald Trump went to Detroit. He went to the outside of Lansing, the suburbs of Lansing today, and he talked as if there's not a Republican governor of Michigan. There is. I mean, he talks as if there's not a Republican-controlled legislature in Michigan. It is. So I understand that you want to lay the blame at the feet of whomever, whether or not it's Martin O'Malley in Baltimore, or whether or not it's whomever the mayor may be of Detroit. I mean, I know you want to lay the blame because that's an easy cop-out, but it's more complicated
Democrats
than that.
have controlled Michigan for a very long time. I'm so glad that you brought up schools, Bakari, because your candidate doesn't support charter schools. Donald Trump is for school choice. He is for opening up schools because that's where it starts. That's where poverty starts. It starts in the schools.
It starts with
and let's talk about
funding,
your
Kaylee.
candidate. Your candidate, you talk about all the great years under the Clinton administration. It wasn't so good for a lot of African Americans.
It
That
wasn't so
crime
good
bill
for a lot of white people
incarcerated
either.
a lot of young African Americans. She called this group super
She
predators,
did not
something her
call this
husband
group super
doubled
predators.
down on.
First of all, use the context of the sentence. And not only that, but I criticized Hillary Clinton. Will criticize her from this day forward, however long it takes, about the usage of the term super predators, because it didn't have a place then. It doesn't have a place now. You know what Hillary Clinton said, though, about that rhetoric that she interjected in that speech when talking about drug cartels and gangs? She said, I apologize. She said, I shouldn't have used it. She said, back then it was wrong, and it's wrong today. Donald Trump's language today was an offense and an affront to many African Americans. And if he can't own that, then what are we talking about?
Promissory note your candidate paid to the African American community is
can't just
failing.
quote
You
one
can't.
Martin Luther
And number
King
one,
quote.
she wasn't the president. She was
Andre.
the first
I was
lady.
going to say, I can see exactly where, you know, I'll tell you when I think Trump did really good. I don't think he knocked it out of the park today by any stretch of the imagination. I can understand that. Bakari will tell you, I had an African-American chief of staff. I mean, I tried to do what I could as a Republican, but we haven't done what we needed to do as a party to reach out to a big group of voters that need help. And the Republican Party can do something for them. We have the right message, but we haven't done what we needed to do. Donald Trump is making baby steps. He didn't do it the way I would have done it. I would have liked to have seen the approach and the verbiage different, but he is at least making an effort to try to move in a
Tara,
direction.
and then we got to go to break. We'll continue
Listen,
this.
as someone who spent 20 years working in conservative politics, who was actively involved in minority outreach from the time I was 18 years old, I have repeatedly seen the failure of the Republican Party properly message our policies. Absolutely, I believe that conservatism is a better solution. We have better policies to help everybody, including Black America, from school choice, from empowerment zones. But Jack Kemp was really one of the people who went into communities and was present. You can't expect to sit there and condescend and preach at people from in an all-white audience in an all-white town, telling Black folks what they should or shouldn't do when you haven't had one interaction. But Donald Trump has had an opportunity to speak in front of the NAACP, the NABJ conference, the NNPA, National Black Publishers Association,
Urban League.
Urban League, that's right. And you would think Urban League would be a natural place because it's business. He has done none of those things. They don't even get phone calls back. So this is pandering because he sees how badly he's doing. So somebody told him, you better write this into your speech. That's not going to help our values whatsoever, and it's not going to, the African American community is not going to listen. Donald Trump is a terrible messenger on this, and having people who've never had any interaction with Black folks living in communities or doing anything like that, lecturing others about that, people who actually worked on those things, isn't going to help the situation.
We got to take a break. We're going to continue this discussion. It's an important one. We're going to take a short break. More on this ahead. Continue the conversation from before the break. The subject, Donald Trump's message today to African Americans. Here's what he said, that particularly the line that's getting a lot of attention.
I say it again. What do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
John, I want you to take a look at the latest polling. I mean, it has him with only 2% of the vote from African Americans. What does he actually need to do to change that? Can he actually change that, given there's, 80-some days left?
It's very difficult, and I think to Tara's point, being present is what matters. Again, you could say this is very cynical on Donald Trump's part. I can give you a cynical political argument that if Donald Trump can get a little bit more, if turnout drops a little bit, I can give you all the math and crunch the numbers, or I can give you the, okay, as Andre says, he's taking baby steps here. I don't read minds, so I don't know what the sentiment behind this appeal this week from Trump is. But if you're at 2% in the polls among African Americans, and African Americans turn out anywhere near where they turned out in 2012, which was down just a little bit from the history-making year of 2008, then you lose the presidential election, period. Because if African-American turnout is significant in Cleveland, it's pretty hard to win Ohio. If African-American turnout is pretty significant in Philadelphia, and she does well in the suburbs, where Hillary Clinton is doing very well now among white, college-educated suburban, especially women, but among all suburbanites. So if Hillary Clinton has the Obama coalition, get high African-American turnout in the inner cities and in the suburbs, Bakari's right. You don't forget the African-American middle class. Go to Prince George's County, Maryland. Go to the Research Triangle in North Carolina. In other battleground states, this isn't just about inner-city African-Americans. So I make the mistake of overgeneralizing it sometimes. But in the traditional Democratic coalition, if the African-American vote turns out and is 95% plus or even 92% plus for Hillary Clinton, 93% plus in Cleveland, in Philadelphia, in Charlotte, game over.
It is interesting, Bakari, that, I mean, when Donald Trump does talk about African Americans, he's just talking about inner city, and even the portrait he paints of life in the inner city, it has no nuance about people working hard, about people working multiple jobs, about all the variety of life that is in any community.
I mean, I think that, and Sarah may point this out, I know that Sarah's worked in Congress and so has Angela, but one of the things they may get their members to do with people they work with is actually find a very positive story about the group of people that you're talking to. That's been missing. But I think the disconnect that Donald Trump is having is one of I know he can't quite get the empathy, but it's one of sympathy. It's one that recognizes that I'm 31 years old, but my father literally was shot and imprisoned in the Orangeburg Massacre during the Civil Rights Movement. We're only a generation away from that. We're only one generation away from Jim Crow, segregation, oppression, and degradation in the Deep South. We're only one generation away from the George Wallaces and the water hoses and the dogs and the little girls in Birmingham and Jimmy Lee Jackson and Majeska Simpkins and Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, boom, 1968. In 1968, we're not that far away. We had the Orangeburg Massacre. We had Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King die in that same year. I mean, those things happen. And I think he's having a hard time understanding how far we've come, and that way he cannot put together where do we go from here. The last point is CNN just wrote a great article, and it was in CNN Money, and it talked about the fact that African Americans, at the rate we're growing today in terms of economic and wealth, it takes years to catch up to white families. 228 years. So to Kayleigh's argument and Andre's argument, or whomever wants to lay the argument at the foot of, you know, these back-breaking democratic policies in inner cities, that ain't it.
That is it.
takes-
And you might think a 27.2% poverty rate among African American individuals. Larry Elder, black conservative commentator, cited that number. You guys might think that's a good thing, but one-third
Kayleigh,
of
when
this
did you hear
community
us say that?
living
That's
in
not fair.
poverty is horrific.
Kayleigh, that's not. Can you
Democrats
retract
owe
that,
it to
Kayleigh?
their
That's not fair.
constituents to say how they will be different than Barack Obama, how they will get African Americans out of this vicious cycle where you're in a failing school and then one-third of African Americans are in poverty. That is horrendous. And it's time to live up to the promises that have been made to this community. It's unfair. Everyone deserves a shot at the American dream. And I have to correct something you said. Donald Trump was positive. He said African Americans have fought in every single war. They've raised the national conscience. Maybe you guys didn't hear that because you don't want to hear good things from Donald Trump. He was very good today, and he was on the cutting edge of civil rights when at Mar-a-Lago. He was the first person
That's
to
not
let
the
in
cutting
black
edge of
youth.
civil
Wait a
rights.
minute.
No, you got to use that extreme.
Wait a minute.
This is what everyone does.
Civil
But no,
rights
Kayleigh,
and
I mentioned
Mar-a-Lago
something and then you
don't go
screamed
together.
over.
Kayleigh, time out.
Let me finish what I was saying.
Kayleigh, but I need you to retract what you
don't-
said.
I know you don't want me to get
You
this
lied.
fact out there. Mar-a-Lago,
just
he was
lied.
the
Let him
first
say
person.
Mar-a-Lago.
He was the first person to allow blacks and Jewish individuals into his club. In fact, he brought a lawsuit against other clubs, part of which alleged that they weren't allowing these.
So why
After
didn't
he
rent-
got sued for
While
housing
Bill Clinton
discrimination.
Why didn't
golfing
he
at an all-white
rent the
golf
African Americans?
course.
Why didn't he
Bill
rent the African
Clinton was golfing at an all-white
Americans?
golf course.
Why didn't he rent the African Americans?
There were a lot of federal lawsuits brought then, and there was no verdict
Twice.
in that case.
He
No
settled.
verdict in that
He
case.
settled twice.
$100
No
million.
verdict in that
Okay,
case.
time out.
Admitting no guilt. Admitting
There
no
are
guilt.
two things. There are two things that I need to address. One, Kayleigh, I really want you to retract the fact that either of us said that the poverty rate was a good thing. Can you please retract that?
Bakari sat
did
here
not say
last night and tonight and acted as if the economic conditions for the African
So
American
you're not going to
community
retract
are
it.
good.
That's
So
fine.
then, so
They are not
you're
good.
not going to retract it. That's fine. I did not say that. So viewers, I did not say that. Number one, if you want Donald Trump to say something that's meaningful to black people, and I'm not going to be the spokesperson for all
I'm not
black
either.
people tonight, but what I'm going to tell you is this. Plain and simple. He can disavow his racist butler. He can apologize for those 2 housing discriminations from the Department of Justice. He can tell me that Black Lives Matter protester who he said deserved to get beat up, he can retract that and apologize for that. He can tell me that he never meant to say those legal fees of that guy that punched that black man in the face at his rally should have happened. He can apologize for the Indian man that was thrown out of his rally today. He can apologize to the Central Park 5 for
All
taking out
5
that
of them.
full-page ad. I'm not
Well,
done.
you
I'm
guys
just
didn't-
getting started, and I haven't even got to last July. My only point to you is this. Donald Trump doesn't just have a messaging problem. He has a message and belief problem, Kayleigh. And
And
he
Bill
has
Clinton
to, he
can come
has to
out?
hear from more than rhinestones and polyester, his 2 little imps that go out on the
We
trail
can go
for
down
him.
this road, Angela, because Bill Clinton was golfing at an all-white.
I will go there with you all
I don't want you
day.
to respond.
Well,
Bill
you
Clinton
were
was
up here
golfing at
lying
an
a second
all-white
ago.
golf course, and the NAACP leader came out and said, "This is horrible. You have to come out and apologize for this."
And 2
Hillary
weeks
Clinton
ago, a
and Bill
Florida
Clinton
Republican
passed a crime bill.
GOP staffer was kicked out of a Donald Trump rally because he was black. But keep going.
Clintons passed a crime bill that put a lot of African Americans
Agreed.
in prison.
Horrible.
While
They've
calling this
apologized
community
for it.
super predators.
And I
That's-
believe they've apologized for it,
that-
Kayleigh. Did your candidate speak to the NAACP
That is
convention
what
where
is-
Bill Clinton apologized for that?
That is what
no.
that is what is delivered under Democratic administration.
So what is
That
Donald
is
Trump
why
gonna deliver?
Alan West and Tim Scott
Alan
and Ben
West?
Carson
Tim
support
Scott didn't even
Donald
show up at the
Trump.
convention.
Tim Scott doesn't even support Donald Trump.
And
Right.
yes, he does.
So-
And actually, Tim Scott is the same senator who went on the Senate floor talking about the number of times he's been racially profiled, a concept that Donald Trump won't even acknowledge exists. Meanwhile, he's
Has
calling
acknowledged
black
that exists.
people.
Maybe you didn't hear it, but he has acknowledged
Okay,
that
well,
that exists.
I don't know. Maybe it got confused with the several other times he called people who look like me thugs. Perhaps that's what got me confused.
Has unbridled illegal immigration
No,
hurt
you're
the
not going to
African
start
So, and then we're
community?
gonna
Go
pit
ahead.
black people and
I wanted
brown
to do
people
this.
against each
I'm
other.
sorry.
Go for it.
I think what we saw today was we saw the Bannon impact on Donald Trump, because what Kayleigh was about to walk down is a very dangerous nationalistic rhetoric path in which you begin to pit these groups against each other. One thing Donald Trump said today, and it made me perk up, was he said you're a refugee in your own community. So by pitting the African American community in these quote unquote inner cities that are sitting, that aren't doing anything, that are just blatantly lazy, that have no jobs, that have no schools, that Donald Trump was portraying, against refugees, against Hispanic Americans, against immigrants, what you're trying to do is drive a wedge. And that is a very dangerous political philosophy.
Have you heard of Peter Kirstinal? Do you know who Peter
The question
Kirstinal
is whether or not that will work. And I
Bakari, do
doubt
you know
it.
who Peter Kirstinal is? Do you know who that is?
Yeah,
he's a
on
U.S.
the-
Civil Rights Commissioner who sat before Congress and said illegal immigration is harming the black community. And he cited this statistic. 2 million more black men and women are in the workforce, yet 2 million fewer have jobs, while 4 million foreign-born people found jobs. That is a fact. Illegal immigration.
And you know who
hurts
else provides
the
jobs
minority
to
community.
foreign workers?
You guys have
Your
ignored it.
candidate.
Democrats have ignored it, and it's a shame.
No, Kayleigh, you can't keep making these blanket statements that we have ignored things or we support certain things because we're pushing back on the rhetoric that you're using that, to Bakari's point, is very dangerous. So I pushed back and told you what your candidate can do to get some more black support. You can take it or leave
It's
it.
possible.
But the boogeyman is not.
I don't think
Like, take
African Americans are not monolithic, right? African Americans are not monolithic. Is it possible for Republicans to make inroads to African American communities?
It was.
Yes, I think well, it was. I think,
I had high hopes this
for
election.
example, I know that Trey Gowdy and Tim Scott are actually doing poverty forums throughout the South.
And so is
right?
Paul Ryan has
Like
done
there
excellent work on
is
this.
a way to do it, but to bastardize, to demonize, to condescend is not the way. And I don't want people to think that I'm saying there's not a way, but there is
This
a way.
right here, this is the problem with what the Republican Party has, where they have failed, like I said in the messaging, constantly, making it balkanizing different racial identity groups. Yes, it's true that illegal immigration hurts lower income African Americans in certain communities. Yes, all of those statistics are true. But Donald Trump is talking in such a narrow, tunnel vision way that all black people are poor and live in the city. He didn't address anything about home ownership. He didn't address anything about black-owned businesses.
College
he didn't address anything about how he didn't
Disparity
address
in
anything
wages?
about how black-owned female businesses were the fastest-growing businesses under
That's right.
George W. Bush, and now they're not under Barack Obama because of the failed economic policies. He's not talking about those kinds of things. Instead, he's balkanizing it and engaging in leftist racial identity politics, and it's really frustrating to hear this.
We're going to have a lot more to talk about coming up. There is breaking news. A judge rules that Hillary Clinton will have to answer questions about her emails under oath. We'll have more on that ahead.